Most of the matter in our universe is invisible, leaving physicists puzzled about its nature. This hidden realm is referred to by scientists as the dark sector, owing to its mysterious nature.
So the basic insight is pretty simple. Why should ordinary matter be the only type that's special? Why should we have the only type of matter that has interactions? We know a lot about the standard model particles. We know, first of all, the different forces, and we also know there are different types of particles. So maybe that's also true for dark matter. And it is funny, though, because every time you make a suggestion like that, every time we repeat the Copernican revolution, we find out we're not the center of the universe, our matter isn't the center of the universe, there's other structure. People are very shocked and horrified, even though each time we learn the same lesson over and over again. So it seems like by now we should have an open mind and be willing to entertain this possibility.
Moreover, some astrophysicists have also theorized the existence of dark stars, composed of dark matter, which might have existed in the early universe and could still persist today. Randall suggests that if dark stars exist, it's conceivable that dark planets have formed alongside them within the dark galaxies. Taking this notion further, she ponders whether the dark sector, governed by its unique forces, might also harbor complex chemistry and even support life. Such dark life would occupy the same space as us, but would be completely invisible to us. Before these theories emerged, another researcher, Mead Lane, an academic and author with a particular interest in UFO phenomenon research, wrote about very similar concepts in the early 50s. Quote, "If there are colors we cannot see, sound we cannot hear, and dense and solid bodies which we cannot discover by touch, it is certainly not too difficult to conceive of a world which, though possessing sounds, colors, and material objects, is yet imperceptible to us." End of quote. In his publication, he suggested that some flying saucers were not products of advanced military or extraterrestrial technology, but were instead manned by beings from a coexisting material plane composed of ether, which he referred to as etheria. Now, he used the concept of ether, which we will revisit later, but much of the context of his claims intersects intriguingly with modern dark matter theories. For example, he believed that coexisting with our material planes is possible because matter has different levels of density. Lane suggested that the beings from etheria could use their technology to change these densities with their ether ships, allowing them to appear in our world. He argued that counterintuitively to us perceiving our world as dense and solid, it is actually rarefied matter from the etheria people's perspective. And what we call UFOs normally exist as much more dense matter than of our world, and hence invisible to us, but could be seen when their density is changing closer to our ordinary matter. To an Etherian, an object materializing on our plane would dematerialize on his. To us, it materializes in our field of perception and dematerialized when it returns to its etheric state. He further claimed that Etherians could become stranded on the terrestrial plane when their ether ships malfunctioned, and that various governments were aware of these incidents and had investigated them. Where is Etheria? According to Lane, Etheria is here. Alongside, inside, outside of our world, occupying the same space as us, but completely invisible to us. Lane claimed that every heavenly body has its own etheria realm, a world that surrounds them as vast meshes and represents an invisible habitable environment, and also a scaffold on which solid matter of our world exists. Furthermore, Lane argued that Etherians and their ether ships inspired much of Earth's mythology and religion. Men thought of them as gods or angels or spirits of the air or demons, embodied them in folklore and mythology, and forgot them little by little, but they were truly mortal beings, despite having a high level of technological and spiritual advancement. He reported that these revelations would be relayed through individuals with sufficiently developed psychic abilities, allowing them to project thoughts and contact these entities and communicate with them directly. He outlined that Etherians claimed that they are not spirits in any sense, but born to Etheria and die there similarly as humans in our material world. Now, if you replace ether with dark matter and Etheria with the dark sector, you'll find nearly identical intersections with modern dark matter discoveries. Lane was regarded as a fringe theorist by the scientific community. But 67 years later, modern scientists are asking the same question. What if an invisible civilization could be living right under our noses?
But let me just start by telling you about the makeup of our universe, which I thought everyone knows, but my close friend who's here said he didn't even know this till yesterday when I mentioned it. This picture is sometimes called the cosmic pie. It tells us what the energy of the universe is made of. And one thing you can notice is that very small slice, the white one, is atoms. It's the stuff that we're made of. The stuff that we're made of is only 5% of the energy of the universe. About 5 times more than that in terms of energy is something called dark matter, which I'll tell you more about. But just briefly, dark matter is matter in the sense that it acts gravitationally like ordinary matter. It clumps together into galaxies, for example. But it doesn't interact with light the way our matter does. It doesn't experience any of the standard model forces that we know of. It only experiences gravity as far as we know. So dark matter has been observed in many different ways. I'll outline a few of them. But we can't see it the way we see ordinary matter. So it's not made up of ordinary stuff. It's not made up of atoms. It really is something quite different.
Exploring the idea of how different dark matter is, this article offered an intriguing metaphor. Quote, "If an alien managed to visit our universe from a parallel reality, there is a high chance they would not even notice we exist. The aliens might not even notice all the stars and the planets that orbit them. They could even miss the vast clouds of dust that float through space. All these familiar things only make up a fraction of the matter in our universe. The rest is something else, a material that nobody on Earth has ever seen. For want of a better name, physicists call this stuff dark matter." End of quote. Astronomer Fritz Zwicky was initially seen as a fringe theorist for proposing dark matter as the primary component of the universe, but his ideas have since been vindicated. Modern astronomy acknowledges dark matter anchors everything together, similar to Lane's Etheria in the universe's structure, despite being invisible. Like the wind, dark matter is invisible, yet detectable by its effects. What's more, there is a lot of it. We quite literally don't matter. Most of the matter in the universe, about 85%, is dark matter, not the stuff we are made of. Reflecting Lane's ether meshes, galaxies form vast clusters, creating a cosmic web of intricate patterns held together by dark matter. Now, it has become almost identical to Lane's ideas that on the strands of those meshes we live. That is the so-called dense matter of our world. Modern scientists like Carolyn Crawford of the University of Cambridge now echo him, saying that dark matter is the skeleton on which ordinary matter hangs. In this study, researchers from the University of Toronto developed these ideas further, writing, quote, "It is highly plausible that dark matter is part of a more complex dark sector that includes multiple particle species and forces." End of quote. They also refer to the atomic dark matter model that postulates the existence of a dark analog of electromagnetism mediated by a massless and to us invisible dark photon. Moreover, there is a class of models in particle physics that propose a hidden sector, a mirror world that is a duplicate of our own, but interacts very weakly with it. For instance, the mirror twin Higgs theory. Such a twin world contains particles and forces that mirror those in our observable universe, including a counterpart to the Higgs boson, the God particle. Now, Lane's ideas about Etheria no longer seem esoteric and align more closely with modern scientific postulates. An invisible world of matter exists here, occupying the same space as our tangible world, yet remaining invisible to us. The parallels extend even further. Dr. Alexander Parkhomov, an experimental physicist who studied properties of relic neutrinos, wrote in his book that dark matter, including neutrinos, is diffused throughout space in systems that are held together by gravity. He suggests that objects made of dark matter are organized into structures similar to those of visible matter, such as Earth, the Sun, and galaxies. Essentially, every celestial object, including stars, planets, and cosmic dust, has a dark matter counterpart obeying the same gravitational rules. One of the mysterious objects currently under close study is mirror stars in the dark sector. Quote, "Mirror stars are, in perfect analogy to regular stars, collapsed clumps of atomic dark matter that radiate their internal energy away as invisible dark photons. These mirror stars can capture regular matter from the interstellar medium due to a tiny mixing between dark and regular photons, which quickly settles into the center, in analogy to the hypothetical capture of dark matter by the Sun." End of quote. Furthermore, on the topic of density, they noted that dark matter clumps, or nuggets, have higher density in comparison to our world planetary nebulae. They also note that atomic dark matter doesn't just interact with itself. It can also create dark atoms and lose energy. When it happens, it forms structures, much like how regular matter forms stars and planets. The fact that dark matter is more dense and has higher mass also aligns with Lane's ideas of etheria, as a significant mass component of the universe that influences the structure of the cosmos despite being invisible. The dark sector, with its unseen majority of matter, includes mirror versions of white dwarfs, neutron stars, and even black holes. What's intriguing is the potential to develop specialized telescopes capable of observing and studying this shadow universe. The interaction between regular and atomic dark matter leads to X-ray conversion, and therefore can be directly observed in telescopes, allowing us to explore these elusive dark worlds. And it seems that at least some of the flows of dark matter were also experimentally recorded back in the 70s in the Nikolai Kozyrev's telescope. Kozyrev's astronomical observations involved a reflecting telescope and special sensors, leading to findings about signals from different directions in relation to celestial objects. His technique indicated signals from the past, from the present, and from the future, based on the object's position at various points in time. Initially, his results were met with skepticism, but now it is widely believed that the tests carried out by multiple independent research groups unambiguously confirmed the possibility of receiving such signals.
Even though dark matter doesn't emit light, you can have some other object behind that emits light, some object that does. Now, might be that the light from this object passes by some other object, like a galaxy, for example, that could contain visible matter, but it could contain dark matter. It doesn't matter, because we're just looking at its gravitational influence. And in response to that matter, the light will bend. We know that from Einstein's theory of general relativity, how to calculate how light bends in the presence of other matter. But the way that it bends will depend on the direction it took when it's going past this galaxy. In this picture, it might be deflected down, it might be deflected up. So the consequence of that is that when we see this object from here on Earth, where we're looking, we might see multiple images of the same object because we think light came to us in straight lines. So we might see either multiple images or just a spread out image, which is called gravitational lensing, which is an indication that there was matter in between this object and us. And if it cannot be accounted for by the visible light, then is clearly the presence of dark matter.
There are convincing experimental grounds that Kozyrev's technique works, and in fact can be understood as a recording of dark matter flows. Amplified by the gravitational field of the Sun, flows are coming from two directions, which shows the possibility of explaining his technique within standard scientific frameworks. Interestingly, Meade Lane's concept of etheria encasing each celestial body also closely parallels the behavior of dark matter, which is thought to envelop galaxies and other cosmic entities. Physicist Alexander Parkhomov refers to them as shells of celestial bodies, made up of streams of dark matter circulating in various orbits. In astrophysics, dark matter is not just located within galaxies, but also forms halos around them. These dark matter halos extend far beyond the visible edges of galaxies, influencing their structure and motion. But more importantly, we now recognize a candidate for a dense, invisible realm with unique physics that influences our world yet remains unseen, aligning seamlessly with contemporary scientific principles.
So the simple idea is that it is just dark light, just like we have a proton, electron, and a photon. Maybe there's something similar in the dark matter sector. So there's a dark matter particle, a light dark matter particle, and a dark photon. And it would have, as we showed, significant consequences that give rise to observable effects. In particular, just like I explained to you that ordinary matter forms the Milky Way disk because it radiates, dark matter would do the same thing. So you could form a dark matter disk. And the interesting thing is that if dark matter is heavier than a proton, that disk would be likely to be thinner and denser than the ordinary matter disk. So there would be a thin, dense dark matter disk within the Milky Way plane, if this idea is right.
Now, from this perspective, if there is a dark chemistry, dark physics, dark light, then the idea that this dark sector is full of dark matter life is not that far-fetched at all. What we don't know for sure yet is if it is accessible or not. In that regard, Meade Lane presented another important concept of overlap of our realms. He believed that the lowest of the etheric, or dark matter as per our hypothesis states, just beyond our gases, serves as a zone of demarcation between the planes, and that there is some overlap of phenomena of the etheric and of our world of matter in this zone. One of the candidates to such a zone of demarcation are complex plasmas. Complex dust plasmas, a type of light and flexible matter, not only help us understand the hypothetical ether, but also can exist in 3 states, similar to crystals, liquids, and gases all at once. A fascinating aspect of plasma physics is how it forms stable patterns like vortices, layers, and crystal-like structures. Dust plasma is particularly interesting because it contains larger particles that, unlike what we'd expect, attract each other in the plasma, creating organized patterns. For example, they can form spirals similar to DNA, which can even exchange information. This plasma can also simultaneously display characteristics of gases, liquids, and solids, showcasing a versatility that once puzzled scientists when they studied ether. The parallels between plasma and ether extend further, with past theories of ether now effectively explaining dust plasma physics. Vadim Tsitovich, a renowned physicist and authority in dust plasma research, highlights this, referencing Georges Louis Lesage, an early gravity theorist. Tsitovich notes, attraction forces between dust particles and plasma are similar to the Lesage shadow attraction model for gravity interactions related to the screening of flows of a non-existent ether toward one of the interacting particles by another neighboring particle. Unlike the Lesage model, forgotten after the creation of the relativity theory, which has no place for ether, flows in a dust plasma are absolutely real, electron and ion flows, and their efficiency strongly depends on the characteristic size and the efficiency of the interaction of flows with particles. End of quote. Tsitovich denies the existence of fixed ether, which is incompatible with relativity theory. But dynamic concepts like Dirac's ether and the quantum vacuum offer intriguing theoretical possibilities. Tsitovich's paper contrasts 2 dusty plasma distributions. One uniform under Earth's gravity, and another uneven in space, forming vortices. Historical theories like Descartes envisioned a matter-filled universe without empty space, where vortices explain motion. Modern sky maps resemble Descartes' vortices and dusty plasma dynamics, rather than conforming to standard astrophysical models. This cellular cosmos structure points to universal self-organization processes. Zitovich suggests in his work that dust plasmas could be potential candidates for intelligent, non-organic life in space, emphasizing that self-organization occurs universally across scales, resulting in fractal, self-similar patterns. This behavior suggests the universe operates as a dissipative system, a system that continuously absorbs and expels energy, while forming complex structures from simpler components. Then it becomes apparent that the cosmos' cellular structure isn't coincidentally similar to that of a multicellular living organism or to the neural network of a human brain. Ancient Greek philosophers such as Parmenides and Zeno pioneered the concept that the cosmos, or being, constitutes a singular, indivisible living whole. And such a concept of everything being fundamentally connected, supported by some modern quantum ideas, has appeared in nearly all cultures through the centuries. While research on the particles of the atomic dark matter theory holds promise, the true nature of the dark sector may hold even more excitement. Theoretical physicist Sabine Hossenfelder intuitively assumes that the reason we haven't solved the dark matter mystery for such a long time is because the wrong people are working on it. It's not a problem you can solve with particle physics and general relativity, she says. It is a problem for condensed matter physics. That's the physics of gases, fluids, and solids, and so on. The core point is that dark matter characteristics match those of early universe plasma, correlating with observed galaxy distributions and cosmic microwave background temperature variations. Professor Robert Temple leaning towards the same idea, writing that, as regards dark matter, one does not need to invent strange new kinds of matter, since it is plasma in different states, gaseous, liquid, solid, etc., that is in the dark mode and hence invisible to us. This fits perfectly with what we now know about the universe consisting of 99.9% plasma. End of quote. Experimental physicist Ken Shoulders also identified a dark or non-interactive mode in his research with dense plasma clusters, which he termed the black state of exotic vacuum objects. This discovery could be key to solving the mystery of the dark sector, or whatever is fooling us into thinking there's dark matter. Much of condensed matter physics involves hands-on experiments to discover new possibilities and unusual states of matter. The condensed matter field also includes creating and studying unique design materials and materials with special properties. The experimental study of dense plasma clusters, such as exotic vacuum objects, also falls within this field. New topological materials also allow experimenters to actually design artificial universes with such unusual properties as, say, two time axes. An example of a designed matter can be a special particle of light that forms a blend of matter and light. In short, the possibilities of condensed matter are limited only by our imagination and the fundamental laws of physics, so the list goes on and becomes even more esoteric. If we understand it and can do it already, then why can it not be done by others? And it seems like the fear is that somebody knows the answers and they are not humans. From the evidence of UFO technologies, it appears they have mastered the creation of advanced design materials. The speculation that these advanced beings might occasionally manifest physically in their advanced spacecraft, along with their vulnerability to harm, could explain why close encounters are rare. The theme of mortality and vulnerability among these enigmatic beings often depicted as sky gods, is prevalent in world mythology. Interestingly, declassified X-Files also mention that the occupants of UFO crafts mostly cut the ignition systems deliberately, and the failure is not merely a precautionary measure due to the inadvertent close approach of a vehicle to a craft while it is going about its normal business. Mead Lane's Etherian ships theory also adds a new dimension to interplanetary travel. Lane suggested that if flying saucer disks are materializations from what he termed the etheric plane, or in our hypothesis, the dark sector plane, it's crucial to remember that all celestial bodies, not just Earth, have dark sectors. These regions interpenetrate with our world and extend beyond them, implying that disks labeled as coming from Etheria may originate from the dark sectors of Mars, Venus, or other celestial bodies. Therefore, attributing them solely to certain places like Zeta Reticuli or Sirius can be misleading. Referring to UFOs as spaceships from another planet is accurate only if we consider them as crafts from coexisting worlds within invisible dark sectors. If these crafts are able to travel between planets, this supports the notion of aliens from dark star systems, gods from other planets. Lane also speculated that the distance between dark sector mirror planets and stars might be much shorter. It's important to realize that just changing things in our part of reality, whether it is matter in the dark sector or our light sector, isn't enough. We also need to understand and use the physics of the physical vacuum that permeates all these layers of matter. A physicist and astrophysicist, Alan C. Holt, has published intriguing papers for NASA regarding matter manipulation, exploring concepts akin to spacecraft materialization and dematerialization. To enable such manipulation, Holt introduces the concept of space-time harmonics, which connect the physical vacuum with our solid matter reality and serves as the link between them. In his technical memorandum, he outlines how spacecraft materialization at various points in our space-time could function, along with a propulsion system capable of galactic and intergalactic travel without long travel times. This field resonance propulsion concept, as per the document, has been developed using recent research on solar flares, magnetic substorms, black holes, quasars, and UFOs. He states, "The potential existence of the space-time harmonics mean that if a craft at a specified space-time point could artificially generate a configuration of electro-hydromagnetic fields which has a resonance with a distant space-time point, a basic imbalance would be created. This imbalance would be out of harmony with the projection laws, which create the space-time properties from higher dimensional properties. Forces would be set in motion to re-establish a balance, which in this case requires that the craft and its fields to be located at the space-time point where such field configurations are a natural harmonic of that space-time metric." The best analogy in everyday life is that of tuning a radio. The tuning knob in this case is the spacecraft's mechanism for changing the configuration of the magnetic waveform. The radio stations are the various space-time points. For a radio, the signal, which is always there, is manifested through the speakers associated with the radio. For the field resonance system, the speakers exist only at the radio station. Once the spacecraft's magnetic waveform is tuned into a distant space-time point, that waveform is forced to manifest only at that space-time point according to the projection laws. If flight to a nearby location is desired, the magnetic waveform can be continuously retuned, allowing very quick and short space-time transformations. For an observer, it would appear to be a smooth flight, in much the same way that we do not see the individual frames of a film. End of quote. His field resonance system looks like this. Its design employs 6 fixed current loops, forming a fractal toroidal structure, a shape resembling a donut. Magnetic flux line reconnections within this structure generate a vortex at the center, resulting in a phase singularity. A phase singularity resembles a vortex, akin to a small whirlpool in water where the flow is disrupted. Thus, the design revolves around toroidal geometry structures, shaped like a donut and inducing vortex formation. We'll briefly acknowledge the significance of this and revisit it later. Interestingly, the spacecraft he proposed has an outer shape resembling a winged disc. This design bears a striking resemblance to ancient depictions of gods and their sky chariots and some UFO sightings. He suggests that the wings would be used for testing purposes only and could be removed after sufficient testing. Even more intriguingly, he introduces the concept of hyperspace. Quote, "For mass and energy to be transported from one space-time point to another without an observable connection implies some form of higher dimensional space transcending space-time as we know it. The existence of a higher dimensional space would open up new space travel possibilities, since the connections between space-time points through this hyperspace could involve laws much different than those which are so constraining in space-time." End of quote. In other words, if we imagine each point in space-time has a unique geometrical address, so to speak, and has a connection to both gravity and electromagnetic forces, then such tuning of waves would be like opening a portal to this resonant space. It'll be a unique code or target, a specific feature of various space-time points, matching its bespoke shape and characteristics, which are reflections of a higher dimensional space. But what would be a physical equivalent for such a hyperspace concept and hydromagnetic interactions? And is there an ether after all? Scientific community is skeptical of the old concept of ether due to its association with outdated ideas and its failure to encompass modern theories. The term ether originates from the Sanskrit word for an intensely burning fire and was believed by Aristotle to fill the sky, constituting the stars and planets. Throughout history, ether was associated with light, spirit, and life, and regarded as the quintessence, the essence of all things in the universe. Later thinkers integrated the concept of ether into mechanical philosophy, culminating in the discarded idea of the luminiferous ether, proposed as the fixed medium for light propagation. Some also theorized it to be the medium for transmitting thoughts in extrasensory or telepathic phenomena. It's known as the Qi concept, originating in China, but with parallels in various cultures. It's tied to the idea of breath, as regulating and enhancing Qi flow is mainly done through breathing. In Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, and yoga, it's known as prana. In Japanese, it's called ki, representing the life force in the universe. In Polynesian culture, it's referred to as mana, representing spiritual power. In Hebrew, it's ruach, signifying the breath or spirit of God that gives life to all creatures, also interpreted as wind or air through which God communicates with humans. Similar to its concept in Islam, barakah is a spiritual energy believed to have a profound influence on earthly life. It is subtle, all-pervading, and associated with holiness. In Islamic belief, holiness is not solely tied to virtue, but rather to the circulation of barakah through specific channels and means. Mead Lane thought there are multiple types of ether, expanding the concept beyond a singular form. But one of the most intriguing concepts of ether in modern-time physics was proposed by Paul Dirac, one of the founders of quantum mechanics. His conception portrays space not as empty, but as a dynamic field with fluctuations and virtual particles. In contrast to general relativity, which emphasizes the independence of physical laws from their space-time background, Dirac Aether reintroduced background dependence. He speculated that ether properties could influence fundamental constants, suggesting they are emergent rather than fundamental. His concept of ether differed from Meade Lane's notion of exotic matter. Dirac envisioned it as subtle and not directly observable, yet capable of influencing matter and energy at fundamental levels. Although his ideas weren't widely accepted in physics, it doesn't mean they were wrong. Today, scientists are revisiting the idea of ether to answer big questions about the universe's makeup. Frank Wilczek, a Nobel laureate, suggests that modern physics proves a primary ingredient of physical reality, from which all else is formed, that fills space and time every day in its experiments. And most importantly, that this primary ingredient is alive with quantum activity. There are words that capture different aspects of this. Ether is the old concept that comes closest, he wrote in his book. David Hestenes, theoretical physicist from the Arizona State University, also refers to Dirac Aether in his research. His paper combines theories from Maxwell, Dirac, and Antonio Rañada to propose that the physical vacuum, once thought empty, actually contains an invisible toroidal field that influences electron behavior and interactions. This invisible field, in simpler words, is a fundamental force or influence that exists everywhere in empty space, affecting the behavior of particles and fields without being directly observable, or a modern version of ether, if you will, of all space-time, much as proposed by Dirac. Hestenes and Wilczek discuss ether as a fluid medium, akin to a super-duper superconductor traversing space and time, transporting particles, including ourselves. In the dark sector narrative, grasping the interaction among ether, dark matter, and regular matter is crucial. We know about gravitational interactions, but there is another very important one. A magnetic effect created by energy moving in a donut shape, resulting in a looping magnetic field inside, plays a central role here. Physicists call it the toroidal moment. These structures can serve as minute energy pumps when rotated. Vladimir Dubovik, a theoretical physicist who discovered it, along with other researchers, proposed that dark matter, composed of neutral subatomic particles, interacts solely with our matter through toroidal moments. Now, what's the significance of all this? And importantly, can we apply these concepts practically? Ben Robert Rich, who led Lockheed Corp's secretive research division, the Skunk Works, made headlines by suggesting that UFOs from outer space are real and that the U.S. military has spacecraft capable of traveling to the stars. When Rich was asked how UFO propulsion worked, he said, "Let me ask you, how does extrasensory perception work?" The questioner responded, "With all points in time and space are connected?" Rich then said, "That's how it works." The connections Ben Rich hinted at have only recently been observed experimentally in our brain. A recent study published in Nature by fluid physicists from the University of Sydney, Australia, and Fudan University, China, uncovered vortex-like structures in brain signals across the cerebral cortex, the brain's outer neural tissue. Excitingly, the team analyzed brain imaging data using methods akin to those used by fluid physicists studying turbulent flow wave patterns. And they found this. Signals naturally arranged as spirals, like vortices in a draining bathtub or whirlwinds of tornadoes. These spiral patterns exhibit intricate and complex dynamics, moving across the brain's surface while rotating around central points known as phase singularities. The same ones that are needed to interact with both ether and dark matter. What's important to recall is that there is a direct connection between phase singularities, vortices, and toroidal moments, donut-shaped energy pumps. And in order for this system to work, you'll need a minimum of 2 such vortices. Now, this is what was discovered. Pairs of yin-yang-like vortices moving around in the cerebral cortex. What does that tell us? These vortices are magnetic in nature, and we know if you have a magnetic vortex, you have a toroidal moment. Hence, we all have a system for interactions with the dark sector and Dirac Aether flow in quantum vacuum. In the study, researchers used functional MRI technology. It relies on magnetic resonance, which involves the coupling between cerebral blood flow and neuronal activation. There's a difference in the magnetic properties of oxygenated and deoxygenated blood. Oxygenated blood is non-magnetic, while deoxygenated blood is more magnetic. Breathing controls how much oxygenated blood enters the bloodstream, acting like a valve that regulates interaction with the structures in the physical vacuum or unseen domain. Hence, the point of all these ancient breathing techniques that were developed. Such vortex structures, for example, can provide a way for our biology to interact with relic neutrinos, a part of dark matter from cosmic flows. For instance, through the interaction between our body's biological plasma system and these concealed realms, our consciousness can engage with them. As discovered by Winston Bostick, plasmoids are stable toroidal, donut-shaped structures composed of plasma and magnetic fields. Plasmoids are so stable that they can function as independent objects, detaching from the source and traveling through space, while also interacting with each other.
A plasma, in whatever sense it is some sort of charge separation. If there's charge separation with turbulence, it will lead to the toroidal moment and not the neutrino in terms of the nuclear neutrino, which basically has very little interaction. But the relic neutrino, in theory, the clusters thereof can have their own, and potentially even the relic neutrino itself can have a toroidal moment, and therefore the toroidal moment that you generate is able to interact with it. So there we go.
The same system now offers possibilities to cohere matter through biological means, similar to how a laser beam can concentrate light energy into a focused point. This system also allows mind-matter interactions, projection of thoughts, and much, much more. Moreover, the data in the paper challenges current theories that the most important part of the brain's activity is its neuron web structure. Instead, they suggest that the brain's shape, its folds and contours, affects the wave-like patterns of its activity. So we are in fact an emitter and receiver by the looks of it, which lends some support to the idea of psychic sources from Meade Lane's Etheria or dark sector, which now have some scientific backing. While mainstream science tends to be skeptical of psychoenergetic theories and often disregards them, this skepticism doesn't seem to apply to the so-called secret science. Physicist Hal Puthoff, who played a prominent role in the CIA's Stargate project, a secret spy program on remote viewing, founded a company and patented a communication technology after leaving the program. His technology focuses on the vector and scalar potentials within the physical vacuum, aligning with the concept of ether. In the paper by David Hestenes that we discussed earlier, he pointed out that the vector potential, usually seen as just a mathematical tool in classical electromagnetism, possesses a genuine physical presence across space-time. This aligns with Dirac Aether concept, offering a theoretical foundation while rejuvenating the ether idea in harmony with contemporary physics. Moreover, this technology appears to operate on the same physical principles that underpin remote viewing and other psychoenergetic phenomena. In his patents, he explains how this process enables manipulation of the vacuum, overcoming Einstein's limitations on traveling at extremely high speeds. He refers to this technology as pure potential devices, which utilize overlapping parallel spectra that coexist alongside the ordinary electromagnetic spectrum. This patent described how such tech allows for long-range communication and navigation systems using the same vector and scalar potentials for transmitting signals. Unlike traditional systems that rely on electromagnetic fields, this method operates without generating such fields. This technology utilizes Josephson junctions and superconductors. It's worth noting that the human body also has a biological counterpart to Josephson junctions and superconductivity. This absence of electromagnetic fields means the signals can pass through dense media like seawater or plasma without being blocked or altered. As a side note, it is the same effect that was observed for remote viewing phenomena. You can't block it. It penetrates any media or electromagnetic field. In other words, such technology is based on the idea of a basic invisible force that fills the empty space in the universe or ether, as previously outlined in the works of Wilczek, Hestenes, and other physicists, and based on the ideas envisioned by Paul Dirac. Effective interactions between ordinary matter and Dirac ether in the quantum vacuum, as well as the dark sector, are not only feasible biologically, as seen in the experimental studies, but we might also have the first technological devices developed for this purpose. Interestingly, this knowledge might not be entirely modern. Something similar to the dark sector can be found in ancient world mythology, particularly in myths about the Black Sun in Mesoamerica, or the Night Sun revered in ancient Egypt, or the Black Sun in Norse mythology. These dark suns were believed to be invisible to humans and the worlds of their gods. These are distinct concepts from the moon and clearly represent a separate class of ancient cosmogonies that are surprisingly similar to modern scientific concepts of dark stars. What are the key puzzles that we can contemplate within the broader picture at this point? Subject to additions and corrections, but here are some key aspects to consider. According to modern scientific views, much of our material reality is hidden within what scientists refer to as the dark sector, comprising dark matter and dark energy. Dark matter, the unseen 80% of the universe's mass, doesn't emit, absorb, or reflect light. Astronomers know it exists only because it interacts with our slice of the ordinary universe through gravity. This allows other material but invisible levels to exist without breaking any laws of physics, because they are not parallel but coexist with us and interpenetrate our matter, concealed in a plain sight. The coexisting material world of the dark sector could be full of life, the same as our light sector. This hypothesis, highly speculative at this point, suggests the existence of an invisible material realm that could potentially be inhabited by technologically advanced beings. If these beings can travel between our realm and theirs using variously designed UFO crafts, then some UFO or UAP sightings, occurring both presently and throughout history, may be attributed to such travels. These occurrences have influenced Earth's mythology, religion, and are associated with what's sometimes termed a civilization of the ancient gods. This also means that these entities are not spirits, demons, or angels, but rather material beings born into the physical worlds of their dark matter planets. They are made of matter, but of exotic states of matter originally, and they appear to be mortal as well. Plasma, being the fourth state of matter, is quite different from regular physical matter. It's likely that significant portions of dark matter exist as various types of plasma in a dark mode, making them invisible to us and our tools for measurement. Complex plasmas, if they extend into dark plasma physics, can serve as a versatile fluid medium not just for unconventional propulsion systems and plasma-based machinery designs, but also for non-organic life forms and interactions with the other side of reality, via Dirac ether in the physical vacuum. Normally invisible, life forms from the dark sector might have technological means to become visible to us, potentially through manipulating matter density. This notion might clarify why beings from such vessels often present themselves as interplanetary travelers. While partially accurate within this idea, they don't originate from the visible planets we see through telescopes, but from their dark matter counterparts in the hidden dark sectors of the shadow universe. By doing so, they become invisible or dematerialize in their native dark matter plane. Counterintuitively to us, our world might be perceived by such visitors as a world of rarefied matter, like a world of ghosts. According to modern science, the dark sector is clustered around all celestial bodies, creating a cosmic web and scaffold on which our visible matter exists. Finally, at this stage of understanding, these technologies share the very same basis with life's bioenergy and psychoenergy. It seems like life operates using the same physics and principles, interacting with unseen matter and the physical vacuum to function in our world. If confirmed, this could have significant implications. For example, some of UFO crafts might not simply be lifeless machines like our metal spaceships, but rather akin to what ancient Greeks referred to as Bio-techne, made, not born. With access to the technologies we discussed, such crafts could be something humans have never seen before. Biotechnological entities, artificially animated matter, possessing their own consciousness, capable of interacting with their crew and human observers. As Professor Lisa Randall wrote in her article, even if the dark creatures were there, and maybe they have been, we wouldn't know. Dark life could in principle be present, even right under our noses. The interesting thing is that if there are interactions in the dark world, whether or not they are associated with life, the effects on structure might ultimately be measured. And then we will learn a great deal more about the dark world.